Hello and welcome back to the Entertainment Vortex. Today we were at Brendan Theaters watching It Chapter 2. This is something that I was definitely anticipating all year. I really enjoyed the first It, and it was something that I had a lot of fun with, and it wasn't something where it was just strictly trying to scare you. It had a lot of comedy, it had a cast that had a lot of really great chemistry. Even with a few shortcomings, it was something that was able to make something that's now considered to be somewhat of a modern classic. Now, were they able to recapture that magic? Somewhat. It's not like it's a terrible movie and there are so many negatives against it that it would be something that I wouldn't actually go see again. I really enjoyed a lot of it. The biggest selling point for me was the cast that they chose for this film. I would say aside from James McAvoy, every single character was perfectly cast and looked almost identical to their child counterpart from the first film, including James McAvoy. All of them played their parts very well. They had great banter amongst them. They had that kinship from the original film, and I felt like it was really tight in that territory, especially the performance by Bill Hader. Bill Hader stole the show in every scene, whether he was flexing some of his comedy chops a la SNL or journeyman comedy films he's been in for over a decade now, or looking at some of the actual moments where he got to flex some emotional moments as well. I felt like those were very strong. This might be a breakout role for him, where he becomes someone who's a little less underrated and becomes somebody who's a little more flaunted in the public eye, which I would love. I felt like they did some really cool work with the camera in a lot of places. They had some really cool shots. A lot of the effects were done really well, especially considering most of them were done computer generated. It didn't have a lot of that computer generated feel in a lot of places, which was really nice. I felt like that was something that they kept going with from the first film, and they were able to capture that magic again in that regard. I would say that a good portion of the dialogue was done really well. Like I said, a lot of that is based on the characters that are being presented to us and having that connection with them still. Having them being portrayed really well, a lot of the dialogue works amongst them, but there were definitely some things that were a little hammy, a little campy, and that's not necessarily a problem. I enjoy films that have a lot of camp to them, and I think that that's in the same vein of the book and also of the original miniseries. That's definitely something that I enjoy, and I can definitely get behind that. I've been saying this for essentially since Get Out came out. A lot of films are like keeping a really fine distance between comedy and scares, and I think that that's because those things have such a heavy correlation. This movie does that well in some places, and in other places it feels like it goes a little too far into the comedy territory. I think that the first movie was a better template of that. I think that it definitely was able to capture that a little bit more, but it also is coming from the place where in the first film it's about children, and those children have fears, and that is something that It or Pennywise, whatever you would like to refer to him as, is able to play off of. And I think that that's less present because they're adults. That kind of changes the way that that character is made up. It makes some of those moments not work as well in this film. I won't say that's true throughout the entire film, and there are definitely moments where even though it's played for a laugh, it still works in kind of that like tension building scary territory. My biggest gripe with this film, that because of that, because there are so many moments where they're quickly jumping at a frenetic pace between trying to scare you and trying to make you laugh, you feel the runtime. You feel every single minute of it, and that can get a little agonizing around the 2 hour and 15 to 2 hour and 20 minute mark, especially after you've gone through a very long portion of it being huge setup. Whereas last week we talked about Don't Let Go, that movie had almost no setup, and that was a very big problem for me. I feel like this problem's not quite as bad, but it definitely having such a long, drawn-out setup was something that was a little off-putting for me. I do like that they did keep a lot closer to the book in this instance, but it makes the film drag, especially with them trying to tie the first film in every possible way, but also not really telling us things that came from the first film. Nick made a point when we were discussing it before I sat down to do the review. It almost felt like they were trying to make it something that would work as self-contained, but it inherently doesn't. You get a little bit of information about those characters, but you don't get enough to where you could really get a grasp on them, or you would have real investment in them going forward. There are definitely some things that they use from the book that are a little outdated in 2019, and that's kind of rough, but it is an adaptation of a book, so it is something where that does need to take place, because if you get too far away, you'll have people who are unhappy with it because it ventured too far out, or you'll end up being one of the laundry list of films that Stephen King doesn't like as an adaptation of his works. That would be rough as well. Overall, like I said, I feel like this has a lot of really high points and some pretty nasty low points, but I don't feel like they're super outweighed in one way or the other. I feel like the negatives don't drag down what you get as positives, and I think that those are things that I could definitely see myself sitting down to watch again, just strictly to get those positives a second time. The first film is definitely better. I would have put that somewhere at a 9 or a 9.5 if I had been the one reviewing it. For this one, I feel like it's probably closer to an 8. While I don't feel like it's a bad movie, like I said, I definitely enjoyed it. It definitely could have used some trimming, maybe some more tie-in to the first film, or had the first film have more tie-in to things we got in this film. I think that that would have made this movie better for our viewing pleasure.
If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. We give you multiple videos every single week. And we have t-shirts available if you're interested in those as well. Those are available down in the description below. We hope you'll follow us into the Vortex. We'll see you next time.